I'm Robert Service. I'm a Hoover Fellow and a Professor of History at Oxford University. And I've come over this summer to Hoover and to my amazement have found that the newly accessed Estonian KGB files have a richness about them that really quite astounded me. And why is that? It's because we don't usually know what ordinary people off the street, out of their homes, what they did when they wanted to get some kind of redressal from the Soviet police authorities. And at the end of the Soviet Union, in the years 1989 to 1991, we now can see what ordinary Estonians did when they wanted some of their grievances addressed. And there's one extraordinary petition by a very, very old lady, aged 81, who at the end of her life wanted to know what had happened to her mother and father. She knew that they'd been killed by the security forces of the USSR, but she wanted to know more. But in writing this gentle petition, she used language that was deliberately insulting to the Soviet authorities. So she said she wanted to know what happened when the red bandits, the red robbers, the occupiers came into her village and killed her parents. And so it's a combination of someone who has had a terrible experience in life, who knows what the KGB can do to her, having the confidence and the courage to say, you lot are bandits, you're occupiers, you're in a foreign country, you shouldn't even be here, but I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you because I want to know what happened to my parents. It's very, very moving stuff. And it's important stuff too, because it's not about the Gulag. It's not about 1937 to 1938. It's about someone who's living in semi-freedom towards the end of the Soviet Union, someone who had probably never ever thought that she'd ever get the chance to put her views directly to the Soviet authorities without being arrested. And she's using the language that she must have used in her own home. And what's different, I think, about this archive, which makes it quite extraordinary to me and really overwhelmingly moving, is that it's from below. It's not just about high politics, but she is writing to the top authorities, to the top police authorities in Estonia. And there is a whole bundle of such petitions, people who are saying that they have been abused by the authorities, going back to the early 1940s when the Soviet occupation first occurred, and then the reoccupation occurred in the middle of the 1940s, towards the end of the war, when the Germans were driven out. But there are plenty of stories too about later years, and they are just as amazing in what they tell us about ordinary everyday life in Soviet Estonia. And little Estonia is not somewhere that we normally think about as a very ruckus, rebellious place. But all of these Estonians are writing, thousands of them are writing to the KGB saying, you lorded it over us for 40 or 50 years. Now we want our rights under the Soviet Constitution. We want our rights as guaranteed by the Soviet Constitution. And there's one extraordinary petition. It's a letter written by a man who had obviously had dissenting thoughts as a young man, and the KGB had burst into his house, ransacked it, threatened him, and taken away 3 books as evidence of his dissident thinking. And 30 years later, he had not forgotten this, and he had not forgotten the names and the date of publication of the books, and he wanted them back. So he wrote to the KGB and said, I want those 3 books. And this is what they're called. These are the titles. And the KGB, you can follow the paper trail, tried to find out what had happened to the books that it had grabbed off this then young man, now middle-aged man. And they couldn't find the books. So what did they do? They worked out that they should pay this man financial compensation. But how do you work out what an interwar Estonian book that you don't really know the contents of, and it is not on general sale on the market, how do you work out what to pay in compensation? So they work out in the end, I think it was something like 274 rubles, and they say they're going to pay this man 274 rubles, which I'm sure he was very grateful for, but I'm sure equally he wanted those books back, and he was never going to get them back. It's just an amazing treasure trove, and it's a treasure trove also that has its downside, because it has also anonymous letters of denunciation. Remember that this is just the last year or 2 of the Soviet Union, when things are freeing up, but they're not yet free. And there's again an extraordinary letter from a wife who has recently become divorced from her husband. And the husband has applied to go off on a sea trip, because Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, is a port city from where cruise steamers went. International traffic was fairly common, even for the Soviet Union. And so she writes to the KGB. She says, I've just divorced this man. He's a rascal. He's applied to go abroad. And this is a privilege in the Soviet Union, to be allowed to go abroad anywhere. And she says, well, I wouldn't allow him if I were you, because if he gets to Sweden, he won't come back. And this is one of the things that you're not meant to do as a Soviet citizen. You're not meant to travel abroad without permission, but certainly if you go abroad, you're meant to come back. You become an enemy of the people if you don't come back. And she's saying about her former husband, I'm telling you, he's a wrong 'un, and you won't see him again. She's just trying to stop him. Well, we don't know the real story, of course. Perhaps he was seeking to live abroad permanently, but perhaps she just felt, right, I'll do him down. We're divorced. That's the end of the marriage. I'll get back at him. There are stories after stories like this in this archive. It's just an unrivaled. I've never seen anything like it.
Thank you.